Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll be doing the chapter Hearts and Hands from class 10 ICSE's Treasure Trove. Now it is there for grade 8. So basically, Hearts and Hands is a story wherein it's a story by O. Henry basically. So the story has one subtle detail that is mentioned initially in the first half of the chapter, which later on gives you a complete turn of events. So basically, one small thing, one small, very minute detail given by our writer in the initial stages turns out to be a very important thing that we had to notice in order to understand what the actual story is. It will definitely be revealed in the end. That's how O. Henry's writing style is. He'll be very subtle. He'll tell the story in a very common, general, very smooth going way. Eventually he'll drop that one piece of information or one piece in the puzzle which you didn't even know was missing, which will change the entire picture that has been painted before you. So let's get started. Hearts and Hands is a story about two people. It's Miss Fairchild, one, and the second is a man that she already knew, Mr. Easton. Along with them, now Mr. Easton, as he comes into the scene, he has another person with him. That person is also a very important character, but the main people, the main story, the main conversation takes place between two people. That is Mr. Easton and Miss Fairchild. At Denver, there was an influx of passengers into the coaches on the eastbound B&M Express. In one coach, there sat a very pretty young woman dressed in elegant taste and surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. Among the newcomers were two young men, one of handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance and manner, the other a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. The two were handcuffed together. So at Denver, that is a station, there was an influx of passengers into the coaches on the eastbound B&M Express. B&M Express is the train that our main people or the whole setting is there. Now it's starting from the starting or in from where the story starts. There is Denver station wherein a large number of passengers are entering the train. Along with that, a particular two people that are important to us in the story enter the train or enter this coach, which are a handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance and manner. That is your man one, which is Mr. Easton. And the other, a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. Two. So they might ask you the question, who enter the coach in the beginning of the story? Who are they? A handsome presence with a bold, frank countenance and manner. The other person is a ruffled, glum-faced person, heavily built and roughly dressed. Now, what else are you told about the coach? There is one particular lady that you are told about. Who is it? She is dressed, a young woman dressed in elegant taste, surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler. Meaning, she travels constantly and she is seated, meaning, she is well prepared, she is very comfortable and she is dressed elegantly, meaning it shows that she is rich, she is well to do. She is very pretty, meaning she has a beautiful face and she is an experienced traveler. Why do they say so? She is having every sort of comfort and she is sitting in the most comfortable place. And also she is very comfortable where she is. It's not, when you're traveling for the first time, there'll be some, you'll be a bit fidgety or something. She is very relaxed. The two were handcuffed together. The two men that have entered the scene are handcuffed together. As they passed down the aisle of the coach, the only vacant seat offered was a reversed one facing the attractive young woman. So now the entire coach is full and there's only one seat left. Two people, only one seat is, empty for them to sit, and that is the seat facing this young, pretty woman whom we are told about. Here, the linked couple seated themselves. It's one seat, but they still adjust and sit there. The young woman's glance fell upon them with a distant, swift disinterest. Now, she is just sitting there commonly. She is just on her train ride, thinking about something perhaps, but not actually expecting to make conversation happen, right? There's no short talk expected. She just looks around the coach to see who has entered, what somebody is doing. She passes them with a swift disinterest, then with a lovely smile brightening her countenance and a tender pink tinging round her rounded cheeks. So what happens is, This lady, she looks at them, but suddenly she realizes that this one person is familiar to her. So she smiles, she becomes happy, and there is tender pink tinging her rounded cheeks, meaning, it's kind of a blush. When very fair people, even if they smile a bit, their face, it gets flushed with all the blood, right? She held out her little grey gloved hand. When she spoke, her voice, full, sweet, and deliberate, proclaimed that its owner was accustomed to speak and be heard. So this lady, she looks at this man and she recognizes him, and then she goes in for a shake hand herself, right? And when she speaks, how's her voice? Her voice is full, sweet, and deliberate, proclaimed that its owner was accustomed to speak and be heard. So what do we know about the woman? She was a pretty young woman, dressed in elegant taste, surrounded by all the luxurious comforts of an experienced traveler, had a full, sweet, and deliberate voice. What does it mean? Her voice was strong, it was firm, as if it was also very kind, right? It's not like it was an arrogant, firm sort of way. No, it was not even loud. It was a very normal, steady voice of a confident person who has been always heard, People paid attention to what they said. Their views mattered. Well, Mr. Easton, if you'll make me speak first, I suppose I must. Don't you ever recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? So now she's asking them. Denver is in the West and they're going towards the East, right? So now she asks him, well, Mr. Easton, if you're going to make me speak first, if you're not going to approach me yourself first, then I think I will start this conversation. Don't you recognize old friends when you meet them in the West? So he's an old acquaintance. She asks him, don't you usually, recognize your friends when you meet them in the West? Now, you might experience this when you pass out of school, college, and, when you're in university or something. Your old friends, you'll meet them unexpectedly, and, it will be a very happy reunion sort of thing. It's the same for this lady. She is very happy to see her old friend, right? So her first question is, don't you recognize your old friends when you meet them in the West? It's as if, the person is deliberately avoiding the friend. The younger man roused himself sharply at the sound of her voice, seemed to struggle with a slight embarrassment, which he threw off instantly, and then clasped her fingers with his left hand. So this person, he does not look around actually. He hasn't seen her yet, but when she does speak, he's, suddenly he is thrown off, meaning he isn't prepared for this conversation, but when she does speak, he's a bit shaken, but then he just shrugs off the embarrassment, he shrugs off the jerk that he just got into, and then he clasps her finger with his left hand. Now usually you shake hands with your right hand, right? That's your dominant hand. That's actually, you can say a bit better hand out of the two. So you shake hands with the right hand, showing respect for each other and stuff. Now in this case, this person, instead of giving her a shake hand with his right hand, holds her fingers with his left hand, which is very uncanny, right? That's not how a shake hand works. It's Miss Fairchild, he said with a smile. I'll ask you to excuse the other hands. It's otherwise engaged just at present. So he's saying, I'm really sorry for having to shake your hand with my left hand. My right hand is engaged at the moment, meaning it is held up. I can't shake your hand with my right hand because it's busy with something else. What is it? He slightly raised his right hand, bound to the wrist by the shining bracelet, to the left one of his companion. The glad look in the girl's eyes slowly changed to a bewildered horror. The glow faded from her cheeks, her lips parted in a vague, relaxing distress. Easton, with a little laugh, as if amused, was about to speak again when the other forestalled him. The glum-faced man had been watching the girl's countenance with veiled glances from his keen, shrewd eyes. So now, he lightly raises his right hand to show her where it is busy, why he can't shake hands with her. And when he does, she realizes that his wrist is bound to the left hand of his companion using a handcuff. This bracelet, shining bracelet, is basically a handcuff. Handcuffs are silver in color, correct? So that they are shining bracelet, it's of a metal. And seeing this, she is shaken, she is taken aback. A person whom she's talking to so nicely, a person who's an old friend of hers, and showing that this lady, she belongs to a very respectful group of people, right? She's rich, she is, well spoken, she is respected. That, you were told about her voice and being heard, right? This also shows that she is respected. So this lady, now when she's talking to an old acquaintance, realizes that the person is handcuffed. The first thing that comes to your mind thinking of handcuffs is that the person is a criminal, the person is being taken as hostage, right? Seeing the handcuff, her happiness, right? Her cheeks had this blush to them, she was happy, she was smiling. All of this changes to a negative emotion. Bewildered horror, meaning her eyes slightly widen and then her lips, they separate in a relaxing distress, meaning when you're a bit shocked or scared, you can say, you don't realize this, but your mouth opens up a bit. So this lady, she is too shocked to see her friend in a handcuff. Easton, with a little laugh, as if amused, was about to speak again. Now, this is like, when you're embarrassed and you try to not show it, you just laugh it off a bit and then talk, continue, or, answer the question, right? Mr. Easton was about to do the same thing when the other forestalled him. Meaning, before Mr. Easton could speak, his companion, the rough man, the glum-faced, ruffled kind of person, the one he was accompanied by, the one whom he is connected to using the handcuff, he speaks before him. The glum-faced man had been watching the girl's countenance. Countenance means face. He had been looking at the girl, he had been observing the girl with veiled glances. Veiled glances means not watching, very obviously, but sometimes he would look at her and then like he's looking down, but he would still look at her from the corner of his eye. He is basically observing this person, studying this person's character from his keen, shrewd eyes. What does this show? The person is curious. Shrewd meaning, it's like meaningful glances. He's observing the person, not just staring or gawking at the person. He's thinking, he's trying to understand this person. You'll excuse me for speaking, miss, but I see you're acquainted with the marshal here. Now this person, even before Mr. Easton could say anything, he says, you'll excuse me for speaking, miss. So this person is well spoken as well. He has his manners. He's a gentleman, and he says, excuse me for speaking in between the two of you. It's common knowledge, right? You don't speak when two people are having a conversation, but this person is intervening and, asks for forgiveness for doing so. But he says, you're acquainted with the marshal here. What is he doing? He is telling the lady in front of him that this person here is a marshal. If you'll ask him to speak a word for me when we get to the pen, he'll do it. And it'll make things easier for me there. Now he's saying that if you ask him to speak a word for me, meaning if you ask him to be a bit kind to me and speak for me, speak in my favor, when we get to the pen. The pen meaning you can say the place where he's taking him, the prison sort of place. He'll do it and it'll make things easier for me there. So he's saying that, you seem like old acquaintances. He seems like he'll listen to you. So please tell him to say a good word about me. So, it'll reduce my punishment, or it'll help me out, right? It'll make things easier for him. He's taking me to Leavenworth prison. It's 7 years for counterfeiting. What is counterfeiting? Counterfeiting is basically cheating people, right? So this person has cheated many people apparently, and this person is being taken to Leavenworth prison by the marshal, that is Mr. Easton, this girl's friend. Oh, said the girl with a deep breath and returning color. So that is what you're doing out here, a marshal. So now this girl who had jumped to the conclusion that her friend is, a criminal, he's being taken to prison, now gets to know that the friend is a marshal who's taking the other person to the prison, correct? So now she is like relaxed and happy. Now you would be really surprised to see your old friend, in a very bad position when you meet them, right? So that's what's happening with this girl. She's so friendly, she's close to this person, but this person has turned out to be a criminal. She was shocked, she was hurt, correct? But now that she's got to know that her friend is a marshal, she's relaxed, and she's, the color has returned to her face, meaning there's again the rush of blood to her face. She's happy about, finding a friend more than the sadness of having found a friend in a criminal position. So that's what you're doing out here, a marshal. So she's happy for him. So she's like, oh, so that's why you're in the West right now. Of course, their acquaintances from the East. So she is definitely shocked to see her friend in the West, right? So now she gets to know what he's doing in the West. He's a marshal up here. My dear Miss Fairchild, said Easton calmly, I had to do something. Money has a way of taking wings unto itself, and it takes money to keep step with the crowd in Washington. Now he's saying that, my dear Miss Fairchild. Now it's like, he is also addressing her as a very familiar, close person. He said in a very calm way, I had to do something. I mean, of course, right? When you grow up, you have to fend for yourself, you have to work, right? So that's what he's saying. I had to do some job, and money has a way of taking wings unto itself, meaning money has a way of flying away. And what does he mean? It is spent, right? No matter how much money you have, it is never enough. It will always be spent eventually. So you have to do something to acquire more wealth while you spend the one you have. And it takes money to keep step with our crowd in Washington. Washington is in the West, and he says, it's a very, you can say, a very costly place. You need money to even go along with the crowd, to even keep up with the crowd, to keep up with the people around yourself, to keep your standards, to maintain your standards. You need money in Washington. And that's why I saw this opening in the West. And well, a marshalship isn't quite high as a position of that of an ambassador, but now he's saying that since I had to do a job, I had to, do something to earn money. I saw this vacancy as a marshal in the West. In the West. And well, it's not as amazing a position as that of an ambassador. But ambassador is the marshal's boss in a way. So he says that I'm not an ambassador, I'm not at a very high position, but theek, marshal just gets me along, I earn enough to get by. The ambassador, said the girl warmly, doesn't call anymore. He needn't ever have done so. You ought to know that. And so, now you are one of those dashing Western heroes, and you ride and shoot and go into all kinds of dangers. Now, she's saying that, the ambassador isn't, that's, it's not like such an in-demand position. And, it never was actually. So, you don't actually need to be an ambassador to become a cool or very nice person, right? And she says that you're one of those cool people now, from the Western heroes, and you ride and shoot and go into all kinds of dangers. So it's like this stereotype marshal, it's like the image of an inspector we have. The person is very cool, he's good at fighting, he's good at problem solving, this person solves crimes very easily. So she says that you're one of those Western heroes who has such a very, in a way, a macho image of yourself, correct? Now, the girl's eyes, fascinated, went back, widening a little to rest upon the glittering handcuffs. Now, even though she's talking to him very comfortably, her eyes again widen and go back to the bracelet or the handcuff this time. Now, this time, they are not the source of her sadness or shock. It's like, she is in a way of appraising the guy for being such a brave person. Though this lady is very, comfortable, very proud of her friend being a marshal, she is a wee bit concerned. Why? Because being a marshal is a dangerous job, right? There is, peril to your life. So she is concerned. And looking at this, the other guy, the one who was accompanying her marshal friend, speaks up again. Don't you worry about them, miss, said the other man. All marshals handcuff themselves to their prisoners to keep them from getting away. Mr. Easton knows his business. Now he's saying that, don't worry, he is like, just like all the other marshals out there, he's just handcuffed himself to me just so I don't run away. It's very common. Will we see you again soon in the Washington? Asked the girl. Now she's asking Mr. Easton, will we see you in Washington again very soon? So she is asking him, can we get around? Can we see you around? Not soon, I think, said Easton. My butterfly days are over, I fear. Now he says that, it's difficult to find me in, Washington soon. My butterfly days, meaning the days of freedom, the days when he was very, free, he was going out with his friends are over. Now he's a person who's stuck to his job, who's working, who has responsibilities. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. Now, now that she realized this person isn't coming, she gets on with her own story. She's talking to him in a very old friendly way, right? When you meet someone, you just don't talk about work, how's life, this, that, okay, finished. You talk about many other things. You share your views on some things. You just talk about things you like, things you dislike. I love the West, said the girl irrelevantly. Now, she is not concerned if the person is working, what he's doing. She's just sharing her views about West. Her eyes were shining softly. She looked away out the car window. She began to speak truly and simply without the gloss of style and manner. Now she's not speaking to impress. She's not speaking in a way where she'll be judged for speaking. She's just talking with a very innocent. She's just talking her heart with this person. Correct? Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. She went home a week ago because father was slightly ill. She's sharing what is happening with her right now. She's telling, Mama and I spent the summer in Denver. Denver is in the West, and she's liking that place. But she says that her mother went home a week ago because her father was ill. Now, this girl, she's not gone with her mother to go to her ill father, right? This kind of shows that she's not very attached to her family. And such people who are not very close to the family, and like it's actually seen in rich people a lot, like extremely rich people like herself. She's well mannered, she's well spoken, she's good to do, she's well rounded. But there is that one missing thing where she's not attached to her family. And these people, they tend to be more attached to their friends. They tend to expect more from their friends, right? Now, this person, she is happy to see her friend here, right? Despite her father being ill, her mother having to rush back home, she's back on her way to the east right now, and she's met a friend. She's very happy about it. So she says that mama went home because father was ill. I could live and be happy in the west. I think air here agrees with me. So she's like, I could still live here and enjoy, but mama is not here, so I have to get back. So she is sad that she can't stay back, but not about her father. This shows that she is a bit too distant from her family. I think the air here agrees with me. It's like, the air here is in my favor. Sometimes, if you'll know that some climates are in some people's favor, somebody in India, they might think the sun is too harsh. But, when they go to some other place with lesser sun, it's more humid or it's cooler there, it works well for them. They're healthy there. So, similarly, she says that the air in the west is more my type as compared to east. This shows that she wants to actually live the raw, happy, being herself life than the fair, the glossy, luxurious, always good looking, amazing life. She wants to just live a very nice life now. You can say that when she's sharing all of this, when she's being so open to her friend, she's approaching the person to talk, to become better friends. But this person, as you'll see, stops her in between. Money isn't everything, but people always misunderstand things and remain stupid. Now she's saying that money isn't everything really, she's hinting at the fact that friendships, old acquaintances, the little moments in life, they are more important to her. And now she's saying that people still remain stupid, they don't enjoy that, they run after money and stuff. While she's talking about all of this, while she's expecting the other person to say something in return, the other person, the glum-faced, the heavy-built person says, "Say, Mr. Marshall," growled the glum-faced man. "This isn't quite fair. I'm needing a drink and haven't had a smoke all day. Haven't you talked long enough? Take me in, smoker, now, won't you? I'm half dead for a pipe." Now, before she could continue, she could get to her point, whatever she's trying to say, the other guy, what, I'm done standing here. You have talked long enough. I just want to smoke and have a drink now, so take me to the smoker coach. As you know, smoker coaches are very, at a whole different coach. People don't smoke in public like that, because some people have problems. So now he's saying, let's go to the smoker coach. I want to smoke a pipe, have a drink, and you have talked long enough, so just take me there now. Bound traveler rose to their feet, Easton with the same slow smile on his face. Now he's still smiling a bit, okay, and he's not at all making any efforts to get back to the topic that Fairchild was on. And he says, "I can't deny a petition for tobacco," he said lightly. "It's one friend of the unfortunate. Goodbye, Miss Fairchild. Duty calls, He held out his hand for a farewell. Now he's saying that, I can't really say no to this person's wanting of a smoke, right? I can't say no for a tobacco, because that's one thing that the unfortunate enjoy. It's one thing that's with them all the time. So he says, I have to take him out for a smoke, and that's where we end our meeting this time. So he bids her farewell. He says goodbye. "It's too bad you're not going east," she said, reclothing herself in manner and style. Does that mean she was not well clothed all this time? No, it does not. It just means that, she had dropped that air of concern, right? She had become herself. She was very not stylish. She was just very plain and raw. But now she again gets back to the stylish way of speaking, the straight, the whole luxurious, elegant looking style, and says, "It's too bad you're not going east," she said. "But you must go on to Leavenworth, I suppose." Now she's saying, "It's too bad we can't meet again. You're not coming the same side. You're not coming to the east. And I think you must go on to Leavenworth." "Yes," said Easton, "I must go on to Leavenworth." Now he's saying, "Yeah, I have to go on. I don't have a choice, really." The two men settled down the aisle into the smoker. They walked down the aisle. Settled meaning carefully walk. Now you can't really walk properly on the train. You have to walk side, right? On your side. You have to walk by getting your legs together, not by passing one in front of the other. Why so? Because the space is less, and also because the train is moving, you need to regain your balance. So they settle down into the smoker. So as you can see, we are now in the last part, and this is where the entire story changes. So all this while, what's going on? Fairchild meets an old acquaintance. She is very much familiar to the person. She's close to the person, and she wants to, talk with the person for a longer time. She thinks he's, she meets the marshal. She thinks he's a very dashing hero personality right now. So let's see what happens in the end. What is that one thing that changes the entire story? The two passengers in a seat nearby had heard most of the conversation. Now, of course, when you're on a train, one very big source of entertainment is looking at people, observing people, and especially if people are having a conversation, just, not helping but listening to that conversation, and sometimes it's really fun. So these two passengers who were sitting nearby, they heard the entire conversation. Said one of them that Marshall's a good sort of chap. Some of these Western fellows are all right. So one of the man says, that Marshall, he's a very nice person, right? So he's saying it loudly. He's even heard by Miss Fairchild. So he says, that's a good guy. He's a very nice person, and some Western fellows are all right. Pretty young to hold an office like that, isn't he? Asked the other. Now the other person says, isn't he a bit too young to hold office? Now since the person has said it out loud, Miss Fairchild, okay, who was very innocent, must have been thinking that, the person is actually liking him, but actually it's sarcasm, okay? He's intending sarcasm here. Why? The other person says he's a bit too young. A marshal is a very big position, okay? People have to go through a lot many lower positions to finally get to the position of a marshal. It's a very important and you can say a very revered thing. Young? Exclaimed the first speaker. Why? Oh, didn't you catch on? Say, did you ever know an officer to handcuff a prisoner to his right hand? Okay, so now he's revealing the whole big plot, right? Now this person couldn't shake hands with Miss Fairchild because his right hand was handcuffed. Isn't right a dominant hand? So if you want to bind somebody else, would you bind their right hand to your left hand, or would you bind your right hand to their left hand, leaving the dominant hand free and binding your own dominant hand? You bind the dominant hand when you're binding the criminal, okay? The right hand of criminals is always bound. So this person, his right hand was bound, and he's saying he's the marshal. Miss Fairchild, innocent, doesn't realize what's happening, but actually the glum-faced man, the other man accompanying Mr. Easton, was the marshal, and Mr. Easton here was the criminal who's being taken to Leavenworth for counterfeiting. So the glum-faced man, in order to save this person's reputation, has tried to make him and present him as the marshal in front of his acquaintance. This shows that the glum-faced person, though rough in exterior, not a very well-mannered gentleman-looking person, he is one very smart, because he studied Miss Fairchild's personality and realized, okay, he could lie about this to her and she would believe it. He studied her personality, understood, okay, she's childish, she's not too well aware of all of this, because she saw the bracelet, that is the handcuff, and didn't react. She just she was just shocked, and she was not sure until he told her that, oh, he is the marshal, and she believed it. Next up, he also has a humanistic side to himself, despite the fact that he doesn't talk much and he isn't per se shown as the kindest person. He's actually a pretty nice person. Why? Because he's trying to not tarnish this person's reputation in front of a person he knows. So guys, that's it for the chapter. It's a very interesting chapter, correct? All O. Henry chapters are. It's a bit educative as well, and the questions in this chapter are usually very easy. Okay, they'll ask you about the two people, they'll ask you for the character sketch of Miss Fairchild, they'll ask you why she's on the train, why she's eastbound. Then they can even ask you where are they taking Mr. Easton, who actually is the marshal, how do we get to know in the end that who's the marshal. Very small things, and if you know the story well, you can write it. Okay, some things you have to remember, like she had an elegant dressing sense, her voice was very firm. Then you have to remember that this person, he was handsome looking, and he had a good countenance, he had a bold structure, while the other person, who was the actual marshal, was glum faced, rough in the exterior, not very neat and tidy, but he was the actual person at a good position, right? So that's it for the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions, queries, suggestions, or any other topic that you want to request a video on. And thanks for watching.